We are back with our live studio audience. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for joining us at home. These are the only normal people in the entire state of New York. They're right here in this room. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for being with us. Now, you're now looking at images right here in New York City tonight, not the crowd. Hate and hysteria is now spreading around the globe at a rapid pace. This is what happens when the world is devoid of American leadership. And this is the result when you elect a frail, weak, cognitively struggling president and they have a feckless administration. The Middle East is now officially a powder keg ready to blow. Riots are now erupting outside U.S. embassies abroad with widespread chanting of death to Israel, death to America, America's the greatest devil. The U.S. Embassy in Beirut, Lebanon, under siege with American personnel having to flee that country. Massive riots also erupting in Turkey, including, again, outside the U.S. Embassy there. We have more protests in Baghdad, in Iraq, in Paris, in London, in Germany. We have seen virulent anti-Semitism worldwide, the likes of which I never thought we'd see in our lifetime. And meanwhile, at home, what Democrats would call an insurrection actually broke out at our nation's capital today. At the Capitol complex, you had multiple rioters arrested for assaulting police after clashes with those law enforcement. Now, this after a truly unhinged, deeply dishonest rant from one of America's most notorious bigots, the virulent anti-Semitic Congresswoman Tlaib. Now, this is after all the evidence that proved that the hospital in Gaza was not the fault of Israel. Take a look at this.
Watch people think it's okay to bomb a hospital where children... You know what's so hard sometimes is watching those videos and the people telling the kids don't cry. And like, let them cry. And they're shaking. And somebody, you know this, they keep telling them not to cry in Arabic. They can cry. I can cry. We all can cry. If we're not crying, something is wrong.
Don't let her crocodile tears fool you, because Congresswoman Tlaib is stoking the flames of anti-Semitism and hatred. And by the way, where were her tears when defenseless Israelis were slaughtered, the biggest terror attack in the history of Israel, when babies were killed, when babies were beheaded, when they were kidnapped, where women were kidnapped and raped and taken hostage, many killed? Where were the tears then? You know, where was Congresswoman Tlaib at that point? And where were other people on the left? You know, they have now become mouthpieces for Hamas, the terrorist organization. They have in their charter the destruction of Israel. They're out there spreading lies, propaganda, misinformation at a rapid pace. So let us be clear tonight. Israel did not bomb that hospital in Gaza. The IDF has said so, and they have presented to the world all the evidence that is incontrovertible that it was the result of a misfired rocket intended for Israel from one of the other terror groups in Gaza, the Islamic Jihad. U.S. intelligence, yes, they say the same exact thing, and they have confirmed Israel's claims. Now, geolocated video published by Al Jazeera shows the rockets being launched from right inside of Gaza, with one rocket straying off course. You can follow it, and in the direction of the hospital, followed by an explosion a short time later. And then there is this audio published by the IDF, which purportedly features a conversation between two Hamas operatives, and they have confirmed it. Listen.
بس بقول لك أول مرة بنشوف الصاروخ زي هيك والشظايا هذه فبقول لك تبع الجهاد الصواريخ الجهاد الإسلامي يعني. إيه؟ فهم بيقولوا تعاون الجهاد الإسلامي. إنه من عنا هذا؟ شكله من عنا مين اللي بيقول هيك؟ بيحكوا إن الشظايا تبعت الصاروخ إنه الشظايا محلية مش زي شظايا إيش بتقول؟ سبحان الله من عنا ما لقاش غيرين بجرثلي. عاد هذول تلاقيهم من المقدرة الورا دي بثلاث محط فيهم. ايش دار؟ بتلاقيهم طالعينه من المقبره اللي ورا المستشفى المعمداني، دب اللي هو فسه ونزل عندهم.
هو في مقبرة وراه؟
المعمداني يقول لك عند الساحه بالضبط.
هي وين لما تدخل على الساحة؟
اول ما تدخل على الساحه تدخلش على البلد، على ايدك اليمين في مستشفى المعمداني.
عرفتها.
Know what's sad? Because the world so quickly raced to judgment and blamed Israel, Israel had to defend itself. You know what? I think they would have preferred not to tell their enemies about their intelligence gathering capability, but they had to. You want more evidence? You got it. At the apparent point of impact, there was no significant crater, a minimal blast zone. A few cars were destroyed in the immediate area, but other vehicles just a few feet away, they were left totally intact. In other words, the explosion had none of the trademark characteristics of a large guided Israeli missile and all the characteristics from an unsophisticated terrorist rocket. And thankfully, based on these images, the hospital was not destroyed and suffered only, at worst, minimal damage. And it is highly unlikely that 500 people died, as claimed by members of Congress, by the media mob, and by everybody else worldwide. It's sad, but that's the world we're living in. That has not stopped America's anti-Semites from using that explosion caused by the Islamic Jihad to vilify Israel and fan the flames of war. This tweet from Congresswoman Tlaib, it's still up there. Israel just bombed the Baptist hospital, killing 500 Palestinians. Just that. Really? This tweet from Omar, Congresswoman Omar, is also still up. Quote, bombing a hospital is among the gravest of war crimes. The IDF reportedly blowing up one of the few places the injured and wounded can seek medical treatment and shelter during a war is horrific. Not only are these tweets still active, but neither Congresswoman is willing to condemn the group actually responsible, the terrorist group Islamic Jihad. Now, these are sick, hateful, dishonest people who are implicitly rooting for death and destruction, inside Gaza, so they can show the world how evil Israel is. As everybody remember, the victim here was Israel. They didn't want this war. They didn't start this war. They don't even want to fight the war, but they have to defend themselves. Sadly, the mob and the media, they're no better. In a series of bizarre retweets, NBC's idiotic so-called disinformation specialist, some guy named Ben Collins, racing and rushing to blame Israel for the explosion, quickly passing off Hamas propaganda as fact. The New York Times, they did the exact same thing, parroting the lies and the misinformation and the talking points from terrorists. So did the AP, so did Reuters, so did Bloomberg, so did fake news CNN. Look at this headline, quote, hundreds killed in Israeli strike on Gaza hospital, Palestinian officials say. Palestinian officials. Okay, who elected Hamas? The people Palestinian people voted for them in 2006, their last election. The media mob was taking the word of Hamas only minutes after the explosion. Their rush to judgment forced Israel to give away some of their greatest intelligence gathering information and their tactics and techniques. Not a good idea. The same barbarians, by the way, who just perpetrated the worst terrorist attack in Israel's history, beheading babies, raping women, burning families alive, the same terrorists who are keeping hundreds of men, women, and children hostage and parading them on the internet to torture their families. And by the way, among the hostages are our fellow American citizens, as our fellow Americans were also killed. Is that what the Associated Press calls, quote, journalism? Now, over at MSDNC, you probably have never heard of this guy. He's a little pipsqueak. He has a show, apparently. His name is Chris Hayes. You ever hear of Chris? I've never heard of the guy. He's dumber than fake Jake at fake news CNN. That's how dumb he is. Now, I wonder if little Chrissy is proud that it was his own network and his own colleague, Ben Collins, who was spewing Hamas propaganda. The so-called reporters across the street at NBC News, well, they should be hanging their heads in shame. But this is the same network that peddled lies, conspiracy theories, about Trump, Russia collusion for 3 long years. Now we know of something that never happened. Yeah, they're the same people. Now, remember, These are all devout Democrats. They're all Biden supporters. They're all members in good standing with the climate alarmist religious cult. And clearly, the president has lost control of the message as the world is now spiraling into chaos. And today's, 7-hour photo op in Israel probably didn't help. Biden was shunned by the Arab world. Leaders from Jordan, Egypt, they refused to meet with the president. Mahmoud Abbas wouldn't even meet with Biden. A humiliating act of defiance. They would rather believe Hamas propaganda than meet with the president of the United States. And by the way, these are the same leaders that care so much about the Palestinian people. Not one of those countries is willing to accept a single Palestinian refugee. But obviously, they sense weakness from Joe Biden. And I have to be honest, for good reason. He is trying to deliver an important message in Israel. You decide how important this is.
I was deeply saddened and outraged by the explosion at the hospital in Gaza yesterday. And based on what I've seen, it appears as though it was done by the other team, not you. But there's a lot of people out there not sure. So we've got to overcome a lot of things.
The other team? You mean the terrorists, Joe? You know, can't you do a little bit? The other team of terrorists? Is that what you're saying? You can't do better than that, Joe? They just blew up part of a hospital, blamed it on Israel, lied about it, sparking riots and violence all around the world. But no world leader wants to meet with you because apparently Joe can't do any better here. You know, he's on Air Force One on the way home, looking half asleep, struggling to speak before telling Palestinians to, quote, learn how to shoot straight. Wow, what advice. Take a look.
Can you talk about the impact of meeting the survivors and the first responders?
That's all personal. Look, I spent an hour and a half about with 17 or 18 before some of them, and I don't know how to say this. Virtually every mass shooting, every circumstance where a large number of people have been victimized and lost, I've spoken with our Defense Department. It says it's highly unlikely that it was Israelis would have had a different footprint, and they've intercepted some. Anyway, so that's why, if you notice, I didn't say it first. I wanted to make sure that I knew. And look, and I'm not suggesting that Hamas deliberately did it either. It's that old thing, gotta know how to shoot straight. And it's not the first time Hamas has launched something that didn't function very well.
How scary is that? Now, did you notice the senior officials grimacing, cringing in the background as Joe was having a hard time putting a sentence together? Now more than ever, America and the world needs a strong leader with a clear message, a person with moral clarity, like Bibi Netanyahu, a president who is able to articulate a few simple, basic, fundamental truths. First, the Palestinian people will never be free or safe with Hamas in charge of Gaza. Second, Israel has got to defend itself and its homeland and destroy the terrorists who seek the destruction of the world's only Jewish state. Third, the Islamic Republic of Iran is behind all of it, funding, supplying, coordinating this terror, using Palestinians as pawns in their sick efforts to dominate the region. It would be great if we had a president who could articulate that message to the world, but we don't. And now we have chaos all over the globe. But fear not, Joe will be giving a primetime address tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern. I can hardly wait. Will somebody wake him up for that? A little coffee, maybe even to Adderall, I don't know. Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.